as most of you are probably aware, the world is in kind of a chaotic state right now, and especially the United States, because of the brutal murdering of George Floyd. So in solidarity with Black Lives Matter and in the hope for justice for George Floyd.
Black Lives Matter.
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 We all stand together.
After Sean Connery left the James Bond franchise, again, in 1973, Roger Moore was recruited for the leading role. In his debut outing, directed again by Guy Hamilton of Goldfinger fame, Bond visits New York, New Orleans, and the Caribbean on a mission tracking a mysterious drug lord and dictator who plans to flood the United States with free heroin, with the help of voodoo icon Baron Samedi. Welcome to Live and Let Die.
Good evening, 003. The following is for your ears only and is classified above top secret by Her Majesty's Secret Service. Our contact with the We Can Make This Work, probably, podcast network intercepted an encrypted audio message regarding podcasters assembled. For this season, the podcast network is looking to recruit field operatives from around the world to reminisce about the Bond movies in a countdown to the latest film in the franchise, No Time to Die. Your primary objective is to infiltrate Podcasters Assemble by recording and uploading your submissions at probablywork.com. Utilizing a two-way communications device with a built-in microphone, the latest from Q-Branch. For a full mission report, go to probablywork.com. We're all counting on you, 003.
Assemble. Podcasters, assemble.
This is Troidal Power from the Power Playthroughs podcast.
Eric Slater here from Epic Fails of History.
Hi, my name's Tyler, and I'm one of the hosts of Too Young for This Trek, a Star Trek podcast.
Yo, this is Corey Torgerson, photographer, film nut, and podcast hopper.
I'm MC from Best Animated Shows Ever so far.
This is Justin Aki, graphic designer and one half of Significant Otter Co.
I'm Megan, the other half of Significant Otter Co.
Hi, my name's Bill from the Tavrian podcast.
And I'm here to talk about
Live and Let Die.
Live or Let Die.
Live and Let Die.
Live or Die?
Live and Let Die.
The 8th movie in the James Bond series.
Yeah.
Do you like goat head cheese? How about Princess Amidala? Do herpetology, biomedical engineering, or American occult history pique your interest? If you said yes to any of these, then Live and Let Die is the film for you.
Live and Let Die is the 8th film in the series, but is based on the second Bond novel by Ian Fleming.
Okay, so it's only been about 8 movies, but we're on our 3rd James Bond. Roger Moore.
Let me start this off by saying I do not like Roger Moore.
So this is actually the only James Bond movie I have ever seen.
Live and Let Die is the first Roger Moore movie.
And I've now seen it 3 times this year, strictly for podcasting.
And it's not a great omen of things to come.
It's pretty bad.
I'm a fan of Roger Moore as James Bond. I think that he brings a levity and a silliness to the role.
Roger Moore was the Bond I grew up on.
In terms of Bond, I feel like he's your friend's single dad going through a midlife crisis who applies for a role in a sexually charged film series.
Because of late night TV, USA Network, I must have seen Octopussy at least 14 times when I was a kid. About the same for Live and Let Die.
But I'm not a huge fan of Live and Let Die.
They just kept them on loop.
This movie, I remember when I first got all the James Bond movies and watched them all, I got to this and was like, what is this? I feel like it just didn't get played in the marathons that were the way that I watched James Bond as a kid.
He did have prior spy-type acting experience in the show The Saint.
So it was not one that was part of my personal James Bond lexicon.
After voluntarily releasing Diamonds Are Forever, what could possibly be worse? So, here we are.
Okay, a note about the plot and elements of this movie. I'm recording at a very problematic time in American politics, with the murder of a black man by the police a few days ago and riots happening as I speak. I can't begin to understand how much privilege I have to worry about recording a podcast about a 47-year-old movie instead of fighting for my life. But now I know that is not the time to be silent, and I stand for empathy, compassion, and humanity.
The movie is actually very different from the book, but both are, unfortunately, from a modern perspective, not great when it comes to handling African American representation, for slightly different reasons.
It's not that it's bad. It's got all the things you want in a Bond movie. As a kid, I think that I was less interested in it because I didn't really understand the heroine subplot.
Looking back at these movies, every James Bond movie takes from the era it was made.
You know, Little Troy was used to James Bond movies where, you know, there was a space station and Bond had to go up there with laser guns and blow the thing out of the sky. And this one wasn't about that kind of a threat.
We had the Cold War and the early Bonds, the space race, and now the blaxploitation era. So you can't blame the Bond movies for creating craziness. They only show what people are interested in at the time. Mostly terrible clothing and violence against women.
It's weirdly, the threat in this movie is kind of black people, and that's where the blaxploitation problem comes into play in this film. Is it's made by white people. We all know that. The James Bond movies, you know, pretty white. But they did a weird thing in this, in that they made every villain is black. Every single one, unless you count J.W. Pepper as a villain. Every single one of the villains is black in this movie. But they're all also competent. This movie is funny. This movie is an action comedy. But the jokes are almost never at the expense of the black characters. I think that was an attempt at equality by the folks who were making the movie, but it's not enough. Like, you still made a movie where, like, other than two characters, every person of color on screen is a murderous villain. And that's terrible. This movie is all about chase scenes.
My favorite Bond moment is probably his escapes.
There are a lot of vehicle chases in this movie.
He has 3 really good ones in this film.
You've got car chases, pitmobile chases, boat chases. I think there's a bus chase. There's a train chase.
What I did notice from this movie is that they try to give Roger Moore a head start, taking the best working elements from the first few Bonds, like the limited gadgets, his magnetic watch with the saw, a decent chase scene that almost directly copied the Las Vegas car scene, but this time in a tiny plane, a fight scene in a train a la Russia with Love.
They really put a focus on that, starting with, I guess with On Her Majesty's Secret Service had the pretty intense chase scene. Then Diamonds Are Forever had a couple good ones, and then this movie has tons of chase scenes, or just car stunt scenes.
The cold open does something a little different from your typical Bond outing.
I haven't seen this movie in a very long time and didn't realize how much I'd forgotten, but the beginning of this film is very surprising, coming from the action-packed craziness of the latter Connery films. This is very serious, and it felt like they took a step back to say, okay, we've messed up a little bit. Let's see what we can do to repair this franchise.
Probably my favorite kill, it's probably the UK diplomat at the very beginning. They use some device to like put pressure in his translation device and it kills him somehow.
The movie opens with the murder of a diplomat or spy with a sonic bomb? That's crazy technology.
That's fantastic. I have no idea how it would actually work, but it killed him. So I guess that's one for the bad guys, but it was really odd.
Why would you sell heroin if you have the technology to murder people over their radio or phone?
We see 3 different locations: the United Nations in New York, a funeral/parade in New Orleans, and some weird ritual on a made-up island in the Caribbean.
I feel like this witch doctor and dancing scene in San Monique is passable only because it's very short, and you don't get a lot of time to see the Baphomet hat he got at a thrift store.
And we see 3 different assassinations that we presume are linked.
Favorite kill? It would be the Jazz funeral and second line in New Orleans.
One of my favorite kills in the movie is the spy on Bourbon Street getting stabbed while staking out the bar in New Orleans.
I absolutely love New Orleans and the culture of that city.
1, you're the only person on the street. You're literally wearing a full suit in 700-degree New Orleans weather, watching a bar in the daytime. What the hell, man?
Hearing the slow cadence of the Jazz funeral song transports you to that corner in the French Quarter where the agent is watching over the Filet-O-Fish club.
A funeral procession comes along in New Orleans, and the guy turns to another guy and asks whose funeral it is.
And joined by another individual whom he asks, hey, whose funeral is it? And the henchman, we come to find out, says, it's yours.
And the guy says yours, and he stabs him. And then they just sort of put the casket over him and walk him down the street as they have a party.
2. I love when the funeral jazz band kicks into the second line. They later use the same kill to kill James Bond's CIA counterpart, with the same people, same outfits. Do this have like 50 people hanging around the corner just in case they need to murder somebody?
And then the whole group just breaks out into a second line, and everyone's dancing and enjoying themselves, and I thought it was a great way to kill someone.
This kill in New Orleans is why I figured I might actually like this film. I didn't know why I had given it so much flack. This is just very creative and very calm, and it's the kind of thing that could be real. No lasers, nothing wild. Just this very smooth kill in the empty streets of New Orleans.
And it just makes it better that first kill was just a setup for the second kill later in the movie.
That being said, I did make myself a Sazerac after watching the scene, because when in Rome...
Oh, what a treat we have here. Oh, the opening credits, and we are listening to Paul McCartney. Is it Wings? I think it might be Wings. Doing Live and Let Die.
The song for this movie is awesome.
And then we reach the intro, and I hate it.
This is both one of the worst Bond movies,
Bang, down, down.
and it also has one of the best songs in the franchise.
Bang, ding, ding. You live and let die. Ding, 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 ding.
It has a great theme song.
Live and let die.
Ding, 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 ding.
Okay, that was not the version by Paul McCartney, but everyone just remembers that.
Now, this is probably one of the most iconic Bond themes ever. It went on to win an Academy Award. Like, wow. And it was almost actually not used.
I hated it before, and I still hate it. That was the one thing I never forgot.
I gotta say, though, the visuals that go with the song are a little weird.
I had forgotten how often they played the intro through the entire film, much like the previous movies. And every time it plays, it really just strips you right out of whatever's happening, makes you feel like you should throw on your bell bottoms and strut your stuff in the middle of the dance floor.
Actually, I think the cover in The Filet of Soul in New Orleans was even better, but can't go wrong with McCartney.
Because, yeah, the director didn't think it really fit the movie very well. It was kind of like a last-minute decision to actually use it. And what a good decision that was.
There's definitely some interesting voodoo motifs going on visually, but compared to some of the other title sequences we've had up to this point, it's all right.
Does M now make house calls?
So we start with M showing up at Bond's place, where Bond shows off his new watch from Q.
Oh, holy crap, did you see that? Bond has a smartwatch.
I feel like when Sean Connery was James Bond, they kept sending him to the office, but now that we have this new Bond, M comes to his house and tells him what his next job duty is.
Oh, I love this bit. M just walks in, Bond makes him a coffee, and M's just like looking at this weird contraption that makes the coffee. It's just like, does that thing do anything else? He just completely shits all over it. So good.
Even bringing along Moneypenny.
Yeah. Oh, I just love Miss Moneypenny. She shows up in this.
I love the introduction of Roger Moore as James Bond because it is a completely different character than Sean Connery's James Bond. With George Lazenby, he was trying to be Sean Connery. He tried to take on the affectations of Sean Connery. Roger Moore's first scene is him hiding the daughter of an Italian diplomat of some sort from Q who showed up in his home. It's a sex farce in the middle of this James Bond movie. Not in the middle, at the start of this James Bond movie. That's the introduction to Roger Moore's character, is a scene straight out of like Porky's where the teenager's trying to hide a girl from his parents. I've never seen Porky's actually, so that's probably a bad comparison.
Yeah, ciao Bella. Yeah. Yeah, she knows what you've been up to, Bond. She's got you back. Just got you back, man.
This intro scene where Bond gets his mission is also very classy. I feel like this is the starting moment where they could have ruined the film, with kind of this Scooby-Doo style thing of, the girl and M and Bond all running in and out of different doors, conveniently not catching each other. But I like that they use politeness as Bond's means of guiding and retaining M.
My favorite gadget, even though it only gets used twice in the film, is the watch.
The watch was a pretty fantastic gadget.
I feel like there was only one real gadget, and that was the watch.
The writers found random elements to use it too, like taking off that girl's dress. Bond says something like it could deflect a bullet as well.
A super magnetic watch that can deflect bullets. My arse.
First, he uses it to take a teaspoon off of M, which annoys M.
Immediately after Bond is given this magnetic watch, he shows it off, attracting M's spoon, and then grabs the bowl end to return it to M. Now, I'm not from England, but I feel like that is a rude thing to do.
Or sheer magnetism. Yeah, thanks, James. That's a very good use of taxpayers' money. Using your bullet-deflecting super magnetic watch to undo a woman's dress.
However, immediately following, I do like all of the cheesy scenes of how Bond uses the watch to slide open the coat closet door and undo the girl's dress zipper.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that, being a UK taxpayer. Pretty upset, to be honest.
And then he fails to use it again later on when he's actually trapped with the crocodiles.
And who knew it would get so much play? That little magnetic thing worked a couple times. I think there was a saw in there. It was the most important gadget he had, and I think the only gadget.
This is the 70s, guys. And Bond has a smartwatch. Just let that sink in. Let it sink in.
It brings in this levity that I feel like is more akin to Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones than it is Sean Connery's James Bond. Roger Moore is suave and cool, but he also occasionally gets way over his head and has to kind of fumble his way out with, a quick smile. And that just feels very different from Sean Connery. But because I love the Roger Moore movies and loved the Roger Moore movies as a kid, it feels like James Bond to me, and it's great. I love it.
This movie is about Bond investigating the murder of some MI6 agents helping the CIA investigate a corrupt island dictator, and at the same time, a heroin smuggling gangster.
This movie once again has a new Felix.
New Felix!
But the same M and Moneypenny, even though we're on our third Bond.
Although in this movie, he just seems like a disappointed babysitter. He has to bail James out at least 4 times, I think, and every time he's just the guy with the checkbook. Last movie, Felix was stern with Bond about several things, forced him to stay in his room. This time he just covers up the world's worst spy's exploits.
So Bond heads to New York.
Bond goes to a pretty burned out Harlem, but I'm sure if he went to Times Square we'd see how terrible the government let it get in the 70s.
Where his driver is assassinated on the road. As cheesy as it was, the dart from the car's rearview mirror was kind of clever.
A car with a mirror gun.
But needlessly elaborate.
Is that something you guys have in the US? We don't have that over here in the UK. Yeah, he took that car into the MOT for its MOT. It would never pass.
Bond gets picked up from the airport in New York City to start on the case, and immediately his driver gets killed.
They were like, yeah, sorry, you've got some sort of lethal weapon in the side of your car? That's not legal? Can you take that off, please?
I'm just thinking about all the variables that would have to go right in order for that to actually work. Just like from a physics standpoint,
But still causes a cool crash.
And the car is careening out of control down the highway as Bond is trying to drive it from the back seat.
After Bond leaves the airport, he hops into a chauffeur to take him to Felix Leader, and I enjoy this chill assassination attempt using some type of poison dart or something built into a car to kill the driver to make this look just kind of like a normal car accident. Once again, this gave me a lot of hope for the film because they're being very chill instead of doing another wacky car chase scene.
It's a pretty fun action scene. Is it a necessary action scene for the plot? Kind of. I mean, it's how James Bond starts looking for Mr. Big, who will be that will be important to the plot. But if you look at it from the villain's perspective, nah, it's really bad. In fact, if you look at any of this movie from the villain's perspective, this movie doesn't hold up at all. Because why'd they kill James Bond's driver? Why didn't they kill James Bond? He's there. You clearly know that guy's coming to investigate you. Why are you murdering the driver and not James Bond?
The best vehicles were those driven by the cab driver, mostly because of the running commentary.
125th, you got a honky on your tail.
I thought it was funny that Bond gave him $20 to follow a car that was also employed by Mr. Big. I mean, that's a $115 tip today that he's getting paid extra to take someone to his boss. He would have to do it anyway.
Oh, ouch. Wow. A Ku Klux Klan joke. I'm guessing that just happened. Oh.
One of my favorite little gags in this movie is when Bond has had the taxi driver drive him all around Harlem to try and find where Kananga is hanging out. Well, I guess it's Mr. Big he's tracking at this point. He doesn't know that they're the same person.
All right, so now we're inside Filet of Soul, and this is just the biggest diss to Bond.
And they end up at the cafe, and he orders his drink from the bar, and the waiter sends him over to the booth by the wall, and then the waiter brings over his bourbon and water that he ordered, and Bond pulls out some cash to try and bribe him, and he's like, oh, I'd like something else, a little bit of information. And then the door, or the wall, like, swings open, and the whole booth twists around behind the wall, and Bond is now, like, captured in the lair of the enemy.
Set him down at a table and walk up with his drink order, and as he's trying to get his drink, just spin the wall around.
But the gag that I like here is that after the wall swings away, the waiter, like, plucked the money from Bond's hand, tucks it into his pocket, and then takes a sip of Bond's drink.
I think this is really cool. Again, this movie just like starts off so strong with all of the spy stuff and espionage, and while a spinning wall may be kind of silly, it's perfect. It's great. I love this.
Once again, there's some really interesting set decoration going on here. There's this weird spiny wall thingy.
Underneath the club, we get to meet Mr. Big, but first we meet some of his subordinates. The two I want to talk about, of course, are Solitaire and Teehee.
So we meet Mr. Big, his claw hand henchman Teehee.
It's the claw. Get the clamps. I'm gonna clamp your fingers, Bond.
And the Bond woman of the movie,
Solitaire,
played by the lovely Jane Seymour.
Damn!
Or as 90s kids remember her, Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman.
Let's just say Dr. Quinn is hot in this movie. This movie has a ton of henchmen in it. They all travel with Kananga / Mr. Big. They all have respective costume changes wherever they go. And at first they seem pretty professional.
Probably my favorite henchman moment is when we first see the guy with the prosthetic arm.
Teehee, sure, he could be played as a heavy, large black man with a hook. He actually has lines, timing.
Teehee, on the other hand, is a dude with a claw hand that is the fakest looking special effect prosthetic perhaps that I've ever seen. It looks real bad. He's clearly just got his hand inside of this little like soup can that has a claw on the end of it, but he uses it to bend James Bond's gun in half, and ooh, look how intimidating he is.
He takes a gun off of Bond and he just like bends the barrel of the gun to show how powerful the prosthetic is. That's a really good moment.
Favorite henchman? I really enjoyed Whisper because, I mean, who doesn't love the strong and silent type? And he just always got the job done.
So shortly after we meet Solitaire, there's a scene where you get to see the backs of the cards for a split second.
Are those? No. Are those really trademark 007 tarot cards that Solitaire has?
And they say 007.
Yeah, they are. Look at the back of those cards. It literally has 007 written on them.
Which I thought was a very creative touch.
So Solitaire is Mr. Big's, well, I guess he's Kananga's? I don't know. Mr. Big and Kananga are the same person, spoilers. She is his muse, kind of? She reads tarot cards and can see the future. And the way this movie presents it, this is true fact. She can see the future.
I wonder if her card reading would be real in their universe.
I need to get me a card reading PA. She's so accurate. And of course, Bond can read cards too. Yeah, because he's James Bond after all. You know, he basically knows everything about everything. That's kind of what I'm learning from these movies.
It's like, does the James Bond universe have actual magic?
It's a thing she can do. And as Bond is talking to her, he holds up, draws a card, and it's the lover. And he goes, us? And she's like, oh, no, absolutely not. But she knows. She's like, did the cards just tell me to have sex with that man? Because if the cards tell me to have sex with that man, I will. This will become important later.
I mean, it has to. Because Bond has to have rolled a natural 20 in charisma and luck. Low in constitution, though, because he constantly gets knocked out for, no reason.
And finally, of course, here we meet Mr. Big, who opens the door, sees Bond standing there, tells his men to go kill that honky, closes the door again. What a great intro for a villain. It's just like, he does not care. He's like, take care of this. You guys have had a chance to murder him already in the taxi cab. You've got a chance to murder him again. Get it done. And instead of murdering him, they don't. And they go out into a back alley to kill him there.
Favorite villain moment? I just really like that the bad guys don't really care that who James Bond is. Most times they don't even let him explain who he is. He's nobody to them. He's just someone who's getting in the way.
So after Bond introduces himself, Mr. Big has one of the funniest lines in the movie. He says, "Names is for tombstones, baby."
A lot of times in previous movies, everyone knew who he was and was like, oh, James Bond, here, let me show you all of the secrets to my plan. But especially in the beginning of this movie, people just slap him in the face and kick him out. And I kind of get a kick out of that.
James Bond seems helpless a bit in this movie, mostly stumbling his way into places and acting very British.
And then Bond gets saved again because these guys are not good at killing James Bond. They're not played for laughs, but they are also terrible at killing James Bond.
It starts with him trying to hide an Italian agent in his house when M comes to visit. He's driven by the CIA in New York when Whisper tries to kill him in the Pimpmobile, and he stumbles into both Filet of Soul restaurants. And every time he's just basically taken care of by bad guys. So when push comes to shove, he can fight and plan, but man, he just lucks out.
After New York City, the next stop on Bond's journeys takes him to a hotel. I think he's in Saint Monique, I believe it's called, which is the fictional locale that we go to a lot in this movie. Or maybe he's in New Orleans and Saint Monique is off the coast of New Orleans. The geography is a little confusing. In any case, he gets to the hotel only to be told that a Mrs. Bond is waiting for him. Ooh.
So now Bond is walking to his bungalow, and they have this dinner theater with a lot of voodoo dancing and stuff going on. And I give this a pass because it is dinner theater. It's not supposed to be an accurate representation of what happened. So thinking, okay, let it slide this time.
When Bond gets to his hotel in Santa Monique, the first thing he does is undress and start filling up a bath, which I can totally respect. He then checks the room for bugs.
Alright, so this is the first time that I can remember seeing a spy kit. Bond has a kit of spy things, and it is adorable.
And orders a bottle of champagne. Again, good call, Bond.
Oh, Bond orders a bottle of Bollinger. Oh, I do love a bottle of Bolly. Can't often afford it, but when the occasion arises, love a bottle of Bolly.
But that's where the normalcy ends, and things get a bit weird. So, before the champagne comes, he gets in the tub, and we see my favorite gadget of the movie, which is this fancy little gold shaving bench. It's just a bench with all of his shaving equipment in the tub and a mirror, and I want one of those. I would probably shave way more often if I could do it while sitting in hot water.
So that hotel was nice and all, but how disgusting is it that the bathroom has carpet?
So the weird thing is, he gets in there as he knows his champagne's coming, and so then he's gonna have to get out and be cold and uncomfortable when champagne comes, and that's exactly what happens.
In the hotel room, he finds some ladies' clothes, He decides he needs to freshen up, so he gets in a bathtub where the bad guys open a vent above the bathtub and drop a snake in, and you think, aha, here's where the bad guys are finally going to kill James Bond by dropping a snake in.
Also, he kills a snake with aftershave and a cigar.
But instead, Whisper, the goon who killed the guy in the beginning of the movie, this henchman, I think, was the one who dropped the snake in. So he dropped a poisonous snake into Bond's bathroom, and then he goes and comes in Bond's front door to deliver champagne, to distract Bond and get him out of the bathtub. So then Bond ends up seeing the snake and torching it using his cigar and some aftershave.
But mostly it's being uncomfortable because you're wet. I think we can all agree that logistically, it makes no sense.
Just, if he'd left the snake in the vent and then not done anything, James Bond would be dead. So this is, I believe, the third time that they've completely failed to murder James Bond in this movie.
We're introduced to another Bond girl in this movie, sent by the CIA, rookie agent Rosie.
So now we meet Rosie, whom Bond disarms.
Then shortly after Bond kills the snake, what's that? Someone's at the door. And the door opens and a gun points in, and Bond grabs the gun and flips the girl over, and holy smokes, it's the other Bond girl for this movie.
Then Rosie says that she worked with Felix Leiter.
Of note, this movie is the first for James Bond to have a romantic relationship that's interracial.
Now, as cool as it is to have the first African-American Bond girl in the 70s, unfortunately, I don't think her character was really written all that well.
And then Bond mansplains the very gun that she walked in with after she said she was with the CIA. Yeah, smooth move. That's how you get the ladies, Bond.
I don't blame the actress because I don't know that she had a lot to work with.
Rosie Carver turns out to be a very annoying turncoat, but to be honest, she wasn't good for any team.
But even though she's a rookie agent, she's still... nothing about the way she acted really seemed all that credible. And yeah, she might be inexperienced compared to Bond, but they went out of their way to make her seem completely unqualified.
We've got Solitaire, of course, and then we've got this woman who I can't even remember her name.
So one of the things that is not very well explained in this movie is whether or not Rosie does believe in voodoo. I tend to think that she does, but this particular scene with the hat on the bed, she freaks out. And I think that is supposed to be a threat to her to complete her job, as well as giving us an example of her fear of voodoo.
She has slightly more to do than Plenty O'Toole in the last movie, but not much.
If she's supposed to let Bond get killed, why would she try and stop Quirrell Jr.?
To add insult to injury, her character actually ended up being a double agent.
Because, listen, she shows up and she's like, oh, I'm your ally, I'm really superstitious. Oh, it turns out I'm actually working for the baddies and I got shot.
And after she sleeps with Bond, then she immediately dies?
And she's deaded. She just shows up to, pretend to be a good guy, to take Bond to the bad guy's lair, which, why did the bad guys have her take him to the lair? Because why didn't she just kill him? And then she sleeps with Bond, and there's a great line where she's like, you're not going to shoot me after that, are you? And Bond's like, oh, I certainly wasn't going to shoot you before, because Bond is a pig in this movie, and then she gets killed.
There's just so many things wrong with that picture.
Rosie Carver was her name. I apologize, I had to look it up. But I do have to give one shout out here. Again, this is the makers of the Bond franchise trying not to be racist as they make a movie that's kind of explicitly racist at its core by having James Bond hook up with a African-American actress. This is the first time that Bond has been seen on screen hooking up with a black woman. And like I said, I think it's an attempt to not be totally racist, but in the middle of their racist movie, it only goes so far, especially because Bond apparently knows that she's a villain and just sleeps with her for the hell of it, I guess, and then says, well, I'm going to kill you, but I wasn't going to kill you before we had sex. Quirrell
is back.
Quirrell Jr.
Actually, it's Quirrell Jr. Quirrell is in the original book Live and Let Die, but because they killed him off in the first movie, Dr. No, they were just, I guess, too lazy to write a new character, so bam, we get someone Bond knows instead.
I completely forgot about this character.
So we're on a boat, and Rosie is getting changed and hangs up her clothing on a hook which opens up to a little secret compartment. And I'm not gonna lie, that seems extremely short-sighted to have one of the only things that you can hang anything on as a pull-down lever. After Bond finds the Woman of the Cups tarot card or whatever, and before he gets on the boat, there's just this interesting little writing on the wall that says, Dr. Kananga reminds, the tourist is our friend, his welfare is our concern. Nothing to really say about that, but I do feel like that was just a neat little addition in the film. Something of note, and call me wrong if I am, but about 45 minutes into the movie, we're at the picnic scene with Rosie. This is the first time Bond pulls his own gun. And I do believe there's only been one other time where he has even held a gun. So far, his gun has been removed, or he has not been in a situation where he could even reach for it. Again, I like this about the movie because it feels less over the top, like it is making life more difficult for Bond.
My favorite vehicle in this film is actually when he paraglides into the base for the first time to seduce Miss Solitaire.
So here we have one of the most ridiculous hand glider scenes in film history.
So now Bond, having slept with and seen Rosie dispatched of, goes back to Kananga's island. He skydives in, which is kind of a fun scene.
Bond is just casually hanging out in the air, smoking a cigar.
He's like smoking a cigar while he's paragliding. All right, whatever. And then he goes and finds Solitaire.